The Holocaust isn't about race.
Agents of the ideological kind of like propagation.
So I don't know what's happening with all of this banning going on, you know.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Khieu back in the building with another insane episode. Guys, big news. Whoopi Goldberg, actor, author, and one of the hosts on The View, is coming under massive assault for her controversial statements on the Holocaust. We're going to be analyzing together the full segment on this episode. Grab your popcorn and your drinks. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump into it.
Schools are being accused of banning books after one in Washington state pulled To Kill a Mockingbird off their required reading list after complaints from students and parents, including a former black student who said it made her uncomfortable, and a Tennessee school pulled the graphic novel Mouse out of their lessons on the Holocaust because it contained some nudity and some bad language. Personally, I'm shocked because, you know, given the story of Mouse, I'm surprised that that's what made you uncomfortable. The fact that there was some nudity and I mean, it's about the Holocaust, the killing of 6 million people, but that.
Wait, so this is a high school? So nudity, 18 plus, 21 plus. Not really sure how that works.
That didn't bother you, but the naked.
I'm not sure
thing.
that they don't use the naked part as a kind of a canard to throw you off from the fact that they don't like history that makes white people look bad.
You know, one thing I noticed is that it's always so interesting to see kind of like these ethno-tribalists project their tribalism onto other people. So like what you just said at the end there, like, because it makes white people look bad. Last time I checked, white people, whatever that even refers to, because it's not very specific, the history of tragedies and terrible things that happen throughout all of human history, including Europeans or Americans or whatever it may be, is talked about all the time. So I don't know what she's referring to. But more importantly, also I wanted to add one more thing too. It's like, this is like a really tough subject for even for me to kind of like think about, because publicly institutionalized education, who decides what the kids should learn and not learn? That's why I'm kind of like pushing more for like private school privatization, because we can get to a place where, let's say a regime comes in power and they want to fully indoctrinate a kid in a certain way. There's not really much you can do to stop that, because we've already accepted public education.
Well, this is why people do it to white.
What do you guys think?
So this is, you know, y'all go fight amongst yourselves, but don't, you know.
Well, and look at what kids watch these days and the music they listen to say
This is white people versus white people? Bruh.
that when proving or showing them a work of history or art or something that happened is bad language or nudity, turn off reality TV, turn off the radio, turn off everything they're doing, because kids are exposed to this stuff really early in inappropriate situations, not ones where you're learning or teaching.
Yeah, and the nudity is a drawing of his mom who died during the Holocaust. I mean, in Mouse, which is the other thing. It's just insane.
But I don't know what's going on. Story,
it's about the words.
It's about the N-word. The girl is triggered in the class by the word.
Because if you're sitting amongst lots of students and you're reading it out loud, it comes up a lot and makes people uncomfortable.
And especially if you're the only black
kid
student
in this,
there. I mean,
so that was what they're talking about triggering. I don't know if that should stop people from having it as reading, but it's stopping as required reading.
Well,
so
there's an entire bill moving through the Florida legislature right now about banning any conversation in schools that make people feel uncomfortable because of their race or gender. And there's also in Florida a bill.
You know what I find so funny about this discussion is that they're talking about the feelings, like fragility, talking about certain subjects. But then at the same time, these types of people will talk about how we should almost basically deceive and not talk about difficult subjects in other realms to people because because they might feel offended, and we should put trigger warnings everywhere and so forth and so forth. But then here it's kind of like the reverse, where they're complaining that people that are retaliating against their ideological push, they're talking about the fragility of those people. I thought it was kind of interesting.
banning, talking about LGBTQ conversations. It's being referred to as "Don't Say Gay." So I don't know what's happening with all of this banning going on. You know, we talked about Beloved being banned, Mao's To Kill a Mockingbird, conversations. I think it's making it very difficult to teach kids. And all these people who talk about and complain about people being snowflakes, how do you not raise snowflakes if you don't expose them to reality?
Right? This was the plan with these anti-history laws. That's
Like I said too, though, it's kind of a touchy subject, and because they're kids, right? So I mean, once you get to like an adult, you become an adult, like 21, 22, 23, 25, whatever. Yeah, if you want to have like some sort of study or an area that you want to kind of focus down on, but when it's like a kid, like tough subjects sometimes, like there's a certain balance, and you don't want to like just override the person, especially at a young age.
started being passed. These alleged CRT laws that started being passed. I don't think people saw far enough into the.
Maybe they could talk about like the race stuff and the LGBT stuff, whatever, but it should be kind of like PG-13, unbiased kind of like approach, instead of just like, here are all the tragedies and all the evil and all the bad stuff that's happening, and you, the kid, better start adopting and learning all that stuff so you could become. It's almost like they want you to become at a young age their agents of the ideological kind of like propagation.
Future, you start banning discussions about race, then you start banning discussions about the Holocaust, then you start banning discussions about the LGBTQ community. That's where it started, and this was all very planned, and in my view. And what bothers me the most is people saying, I don't want my children to be uncomfortable. Well, how about your children being uncomfortable in a way of learning empathy, in a way of learning sorrow, in a way of being able to empathize with other people's plights? I've always said, if my children.
By the way, this whole empathy thing, performative empathy that she's doing right now, where is the empathy when you're talking to somebody that might not be of the same kind of position as you are? Very quickly, we see these people literally go full hostile, shut down the person, censor the person. You notice how it's kind of interesting how nowadays we don't talk about bullying or cyberbullying as much as before, because with the mainstream being center left, as long as you are with kind of like the mainstream kind of like narrative and the mainstream ideas, and you're somebody, and then you encounter somebody that's against that, then it's okay to slander, hurt, bully, whatever it may be. So that's what I was saying, that bullying no longer exists, because as long as it's somebody that is against us or that we don't like, that are not fully in line with us, it's going to be okay.
Are subjected to racism at a very early age, which they are, then your child should be okay with having a little bit of discomfort and learning about the racism that exists.
I observe that young children are naturally empathetic.
Then if you're somebody that is consistent with these views, then you should not be the advocate of hate speech laws, censoring and hate speech on social media platforms. Why don't we just put everything on the table? Oh, but you're not for that. Then these people should be at the forefront of free speech.
Yeah. And that the empathy is kind of drained out of them by their parents and things that they hear out there.
It's that song. It's the
You've
song
got to
that
be
Barbara.
carefully
That's
taught
right.
from South Pacific.
Yeah.
You know, my grandson, I remember when he was around 3 or 4 years old, there was a kid who was in trouble for some reason, and I mean, it gives me chills. My grandson put his arm around the kid, like, I'm with you. And when you talk about empathy, children are naturally like that.
Well, it's the parents' issue.
And if you teach a white kid what happened to his friend who happens to be black, he might feel terrible about what happened. That doesn't mean he feels bad that he did something.
Exactly.
This is the confusion that they're creating, I believe.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that colleges, this all started in colleges and universities and not wanting to make kids uncomfortable. And we talked about it once here on the show with actually Van Jones, when he said, if I send my kids to school, I want them to be uncomfortable. I want people to push back on their beliefs, because otherwise we're not preparing kids to go out into the real world. We're preparing them for a world that doesn't exist outside of their own house.
Yeah, for sure, uncomfortable, but there's also a limit to like uncomfortability, especially when you're referring to a child that's still in development phase, right? But I mean, I'm actually kind of in line with this kind of mentality that they should be challenged. They should be pushed. They should be kind of like they should question a lot of stuff. There should be things on the table that are kind of difficult to think about. But especially with a developing child, it should be kind of like there's a certain spectrum that and on the line, I think, that should not be crossed. I don't know what the line is, but
Well, also, if you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
oh,
It's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about
Well,
race.
what is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's
Well,
about
but
going
it's not-
after
it's
Jews
not about
and
ideal race.
gypsies
It's,
and
but these are two
Romas.
white groups of people.
Well,
How
that
do
would
we
have to
the Holocaust was ethno-tribalism 101 pushed to its absolute limits, which these people are ethno-tribalists at the fundamental level. So I'm not really sure what she's referring to, but also I think also it's tough because the idea of race is so, again, like I said before, unspecific. So it's like, who exactly is encapsulated in like this idea of like the white race or like black race or whatever it may be. Like, for example, let's say we talk about like white people. It's like, in this case, she just said white versus white, right? So we had white, I guess, Europeans, whatever the heck that even means. And then we had white Jewish people, I guess, whatever the heck that even means. Even within the Jewish people, there is division as far as like their ethnicity, their background, etc. And then within the Europeans, there's a difference between their backgrounds, ethnicities, etc. What's funny too that I noticed is that back in the days, like during the World War II era, Germany, etc., the Jewish people were not considered white. They were considered kind of like secondary, lesser than. And now we're in a situation today in 21st century where now we put the Jews or Jewish people into the category of white. So I found it's kind of funny how it's like with ethno-tribalism or race tribalism, where did these people that are like in the middle, kind of like on that line, like where did they stand? For example, myself, I'm half Asian, half white, half Asian, half Canadian. And then the Canadian side has a bunch of different ethnic backgrounds. Where is it that I stand in this whole thing? Even and these people, they have such a hard time also justifying biracial, quadraracial type people. So it's just insane. But let's keep
How do
going.
we have to black
They
people
just see
too?
them as white.
And they would
But
have
you're
to
missing the
homosexuals.
point. You're
Yeah.
missing the point.
Yeah.
The minute you turn it into race, it goes down this alley. Let's talk about it for what it is. It's how people treat each other. It's a problem. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other. So if you're uncomfortable, if you hear about mouse, should you be worried? Should your child say, oh my God, I wonder if that's me? No, that's
I think this episode is kind of like a Freudian slip for her. Like, it was just like in the moment she said certain things that are obviously false, but she said certain things. But she said it's not about race, and then we take a step back, and then everything in her life, not in her life, but not specifically her, but everything in society is related to race. She's talking about the black kid and the white kid and this kid and that kid. Bro, ethno-tribalists, it doesn't make any sense when they talk.
not what they're going to say. They're going to say, I don't want to be like that.
Well, hopefully.
I
Well,
want to be cool
Yeah.
and
Well,
intelligent.
yeah, most kids, they don't want to be cruel.
No, they don't.
And we're living in an era where people are comparing vaccine cards to the yellow stars, where people are comparing vaccinations to what Anne Frank went through.
Yeah.
So it is necessary for kids to learn about the
They have
Holocaust.
And by the way,
About man's inhumanity to man, however it exposes itself. I have to cut you off.
I just want to say that mouse.
Yeah, I mean, history definitely should be revised. But last time I checked, the people that are trying to erase Western history, let's say, or Western civilization history, are these people, which is kind of funny. Or what they do is they rewrite history, and they pick and choose which parts of history we should focus on, and then they evade and discount other parts of history we should focus on. Again, you need to be more consistent. But these people have a political agenda, and what they do is they basically pick and choose where they can be virtuous and where they could kind of like shut it off, turn it down, whatever it may be. I mean, they call everyone they disagree with radical right, alt-right, neo, whatever. She made somewhat of an apology later on. Let's read it together. Here's what she said. On today's show, I said the Holocaust is not about race, but about man's inhumanity to man. I should have said it is about both. A Jonathan Greenblatt from the Anti-Defamation League shared, quote unquote, the Holocaust was about Nazi systemic annihilation of the Jewish people, who they deemed to be an inferior race. I stand corrected. The Jewish people around the world have always had my support, and that will never waver. I'm sorry for the hurt I have caused. Written by sincere Whoopi Goldberg. There you have it, folks. If you guys think I'm tripping out or you have any thoughts related to the video, let me know in the comment section below. I'm super interested to see what you guys have to say. Also, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'll try to make more videos similar to this one in the future for sure. It's very fun and analytical. Without anything else to add, I'll see you guys in the next show. Peace!